Well, good morning, friends. Spring is upon us. Yes, it's eventually got here. I know it's been a while. It's a long winter, and we've gone through a lot of cold and everything else. But I was walking out, perhaps last week, and I noticed the daffodils and the tulips starting to come out of the ground, and I thought, wonderful, wonderful. Spring is finally here. And then, wouldn't you know it, was it 3 or 4 days later, sometime last week, when we had a frost. And sure enough, the next morning I walked out and the daffodils and the tulips had wilted and were going down to be perhaps nothing, I thought. But then it spruced up again, didn't it? And I know yesterday I was looking outside here around the grounds of the Shepherd village, and I noticed a gardener laying out mulch and putting grass seed in all the areas to make our place look so much beautiful. And it reminds me of God's nature and what He has provided for us, the beautiful things He gives us to look at and to enjoy in life. It reminds me of the message then on the Sermon on the Mount. We look at all the creation that He's made, and we look at the flowers and the daffodils, and they grow and then they wilt and then they grow up again. And He tells us, as an example of that, we're not to worry about things in life. The Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6, we all know it very well, of course, and there are many portions of it, one of the greatest of all sermons, of course, ever. And in Matthew 6, verse 25, He says, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes?" You've lived long enough to know the truth in that. There is far more to life than food, which is necessary, of course, and clothing, which is nice. But there's love, there's companionship, there's achievements that we've done throughout life. There's been the ups and downs and the struggles we've faced, and life is more than just the food and the clothes, isn't it? And then He says, look at the birds of the air. This is verse 26. "They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them." I often I'm a very early riser. I get up very early, and usually by sunrise, I'm out of the door and I go for a walk because it's quiet, there's nobody around. And my walk, I generally go through West Highland Creek, the ravine next to the golf course, just north of us here. And when I walk through there, I see a lot of nature that many of us miss. A couple of weeks back, I was walking through there, and I saw an opossum, a Virginia opossum, which is a very rare animal in these parts of the world. They're mostly native to the south of the border, but they're scradgy creeping up here. And I got a picture of this opossum. And then I saw a cormorant sitting in the creek. And it was a very tall bird. The cormorants are about 3 feet tall or better. And then the next day, my wife and I were walking. We saw a big hare with great big long ears. And I think those creatures, God is feeding them with all of the supplies that they need. And then He says to us in that same verse, "Are you not much more valuable than they?" We are more valuable than opossums and foxes and cormorants and hares and birds. We are somebody special to God. We are a special creation. You know, my wife and I, we love the birds. We look at those birds, and we look at especially the robins this time of year. Lots of robins out, and the male and the female. And the easy way to tell the difference from the male is it's usually full red breast, whereas the female is not quite as full. And interesting point, the females are the ones that usually build the nest, and the males are the ones that go out and gather food to feed the female while she's laying the eggs. And they normally lay 4 eggs every year. Every clutch is 4 eggs. And they come back to the same nesting place every year. So they're creatures of habit. But God feeds them. He provides for them. They don't have to get silos and store their wheat and stuff. It's all there. And then in verse 27, God says, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Absolutely not. An old friend way back told me once, he says, you die if you worry, you die if you don't. We're all going to die one day, and worrying is not going to make that day come any faster or slower. It's not going to make any difference. In fact, it could make it worse, because worriers tend to get anxiety, they build up stress, which is also a leader of disease. And then he says, and why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Those daffodils and tulips, they just pop up. On that walk there, we're doing some construction, and they'd fill the construction in, and they'd put some nice mulch down and a whole bunch of grass seed. I saw the grass seed there about 2 weeks ago. And now when I walk out, that grass seed is starting to grow up. It's about 1 inch, 2 inches long, and pretty soon it'll be covered. A beautiful green grass. And he says, yet I tell you, in verse 29, that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these, his flowers, his creation. And if that is how God clothes the grass of the field, verse 30, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? Will he not that much more clothe you? So do not worry, he says in verse 31, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. 33, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well, all of them. Therefore, finally, the last word, do not worry about tomorrow. 3 times in that section he said, do not worry. But here he says, do not worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So whatever you're struggling with, God says, do not worry. I know you say that's easy for you to say. You don't know the struggles I've been facing. You don't know about my financial difficulty. You don't know how my family is suffering through this pandemic and the struggles with their finances. You don't know how lonely I am. You don't know how sad I sometimes feel. You're right. I don't know those things. But what I do know is that your Heavenly Father does. He knows everything about your situation and wants to reassure you that no matter what, He has everything under control. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. God bless you.